numbing fatigue, life-threatening blood clots. Just you can do. Evidently, reading through the article, kid could do nothing. In fact, he was experiencing bloody diarrhea 20 times a day. Stomach pains such that he couldn't get off the couch, curled up in a fetal position for days at a time. I mean, this is someone who, and understand, this kid was, a starting, guard on the basketball team at Penn State. He was, 6'4", healthy, and then he's diagnosed with this ulcerative colitis. And, went to a couple of doctors and they tried to figure this out. Finally, they go to the Mayo Clinic and they get, this cocktail of drugs, as it's described in the article, that costs nearly $2 million a year. I mean, this kid's care is costing this insurance company $2 million a year. And what's next. All of the stuff that goes into denying this family and this kid the care that they're supposed to get because they're insured. This is the reason you have insurance. You have insurance so that if bad things happen to you, you get the care that you need. Now, thanks to the Affordable Care Act, this is one of those little weird things that, that dreaded Obamacare. Most insurances pre-Affordable Care Act capped at $1 million. Evidently, this guy's drug regime was nearly $2 million a year. His medical bills were like $2 million a year. So he'd have been cut off a long time ago, pre-Affordable Care Act. Now, the family's like, screw this. We're going to fight. The interesting thing is when they fought, they went and they were able to discover a whole bunch of records, a whole bunch of recordings of phone calls of people like this nurse that they talk about who called the account manager saying, they canceled it. And the guy laughing, yeah, I knew that was going to happen. Her saying, yeah, me too. Like it was some kind of joke. And it was almost like a movie scene, like a bad movie scene. That you've got these two people who could give a rat's behind about this kid who is struggling and suffering and because it's not them. What do they care about? The family, fights through this. Even this nurse goes, I can't believe she's going to do this. I can't believe they're going to pursue this. Because the reality is we as Americans, we complain a lot. We're good at complaining. Oh my God, are we good at complaining? But following through and actually doing something about our complaints, not so much. In fact, one research study showed that of all of this is amazing to me. Of all of the complaining, of all of the things that happen with fighting with insurance companies, Americans only file formal appeals in 1% of the denied claims. 1%. So the fact that this family is like, oh, wait a second. Our doctors are saying that it's medically necessary that this kid gets this medication, that gets this treatment. Your quack doctor is saying it's not. We're gonna fight this. So when they went and they got all this information, because the great thing about civil trials is discovery, which is why when people say, I'm going to sue you, they never do, because there's a discovery process. And you have to turn over information. What they found is that this United Healthcare was doctor shopping. They actually had records that they were able to get that showed doctors saying, no, you can't stop this kid's medications. It's going to be detrimental to his health. They buried that. No, can't have that. That's bad for our denial rate. And they took the quack doctors, well, it's not necessary, so that they could deny this kid the care that he needs. Now, look, this is one case. One case. Can you imagine, the scale of if only 1% of us are filing appeals on these? Because most Americans just take it. You can't fight City Hall. You can't fight these big corporations. And good on these people. Because the reality is what we know, again, what the studies show us, is 1 in 7 claims are denied. 1 in 7 claims are denied, not medically necessary. I keep coming back to this moment where you go, when do we dump these for-profit insurers? When do we dump these big companies? How did they get so much power? Now, we've heard stories of the past, and again, none of this stuff is new. What's new here is that there's actually audio recordings of these people having some of the most vile conversations, joking about this kid's life and how they were able to deny this kid care. We know that there were hit squads in the past that would, if you got cancer, they would comb through your past to try and find some little thing, some way to weasel out of your policy so that they could deny you care. Oh, well, you walked by a building that had asbestos in it 25 years ago. You didn't put that on the application. You got mesothelioma. I'm sorry, we can't cover you. And you go, this is why I hate insurance companies. Because again, the reality is they're not in business to pay claims. They're not in business. They didn't get that account at Penn State because they thought, oh, gee, I'm going to make sure that we get the best health care for those kids. No, they did it because, hey, there's a lot of cash to be made. There's a lot of easy, low-hanging fruit. These are young people who aren't going to use a lot of insurance. They may break an arm every now and again, but hey, that's no big deal. And the thing that's frustrating and angering to me here is that, again, you come back to these companies are making such obscene amounts of money. And their goal? Deny you, deny me, deny us the care we need. I mean, it's disgraceful to me. And only because this one family decided, hey, we're going to fight this. We're going to fight this as far and as hard as we can. We're going to spend what we have to make sure that this happens. I mean, it's mind-blowing. And, I come back to, because I've known people who have had long-term illnesses. And the last thing you want to have to do while you're trying to struggle to get better is to fight with an appeals process or fight with an insurance company. Most people are just going to go, well, I'm just going to have to suffer or figure out how to do without. This, while we had that performative display in Congress yesterday about, well, you can't have socialism. This is what capitalism gets us. Because it's all about the money. There's the good PR, there's the, oh, we care. They don't. They care about the bottom line. And the sad reality is you go through this, again, this is one story of one person who their life was turned upside down. Finally found some relief only to have it yanked away. And why? Again, back to the profits. Love to hear your thoughts. If you've got a story like this, healthcare horror story, I'd love to hear it. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com, or give us a call, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Because I look at this, and we've put so much power into the hands of these big corporations. And for what? Now, I've had people tell me, well, Medicare. No, Medicare what? The privatized plans, the ones that we're spending all this money on, that they're doing this denying people care. They're denying seniors care. They're doing everything that they can do to be just like they are these big companies. What am I talking about? And you go, isn't there something we can do? Yeah, there is. We can start locking people up for doing this stuff. But we never do. We never seem to go after the white-collar criminals. I go back to that Rainmaker movie where the kid died. The kid ultimately died because they denied him the treatment that a doctor of his said it was something that could have prolonged his life. And nobody went to jail. There was a little slap on the face. They paid a little bit of money. There was that. But I think if we start going after some of these people, start locking some of these people up, maybe Maybe decency might return. I mean, I'm listening to the phone clips, and I couldn't help but be just repulsed that someone would think that way. I got to be honest, if I had to get a job, that my job was to go, I'm sorry, yeah, I know you've got this horrible ailment. I know that this is the only thing that gets you relief. I know this is the only thing that gets you functional, but hey, it just costs too much money for the company, and we're going to have to cut you off. You're going to have to go back to dumping out blood 20 times a day in fetal position on the couch. Sorry, that's your reality, because it's going to cost us too much. Yeah, I know you paid your premiums, but my bonus depends on it. I don't know that I take that job. And I don't know that there's... Actually, I do. I know. I don't take that job. What is it about a segment of the population that would do that to someone? It seems like a loss of humanity. I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com, or give us a quick call, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Back after this.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Here's some fun news. Former Vice President Mike Pence back in the news. He may be going to run for president here in 2024, but he's calling for Social Security reform. Yeah, it's high on the list. He wants to institute. Here's an original idea. You ready for it? Private saving accounts for Social Security. Yeah. We're back to this crap again. Private. You're gonna get your own plan. Gonna get your own Social Security savings account. You might, and look, if you listen to Ted Cruz, you can take money out of it to pay for maternity leave, so you'll have nothing at the end. Understand what Social Security was meant to be. It was never meant to be a retirement program. It wasn't meant to be your main retirement. It wasn't meant to be a savings vehicle. It was an anti-poverty program. It was to say that, you know what? Seniors in this country are never going to fall below a threshold, a minimum line. We're not going to make people eat cat food. We're going to ensure that in old age you're not going to be destitute, being warehoused in an old age home or a debtor's prison, if you will. It seems my Republican friends are hell-bent on returning us to those days. Look, they want to return us to the good old days of the 80s and 90s. We know that. Not the 1980s and 90s, mind you, but they want to return us to those days where if you're hungry, desperate, poverty wages, desperation, but if you're old and you can't afford to live, well, we're going to move on from you. And this is kind of one of these moments where you go, I'm struggling with the direction that the Republicans want to take us. His quote is, there are modest reforms and entitlements. Again, your Social Security and Medicare that you paid for, they still view as entitlements that can be done without disadvantaging anybody at this point of the need. He said, I think the day could come when we could replace the New Deal with a better deal. literally give younger Americans the ability to take a portion of their Social Security withholdings and put it into a private savings account. Oh, this was a bad idea. When it came up during the Bush years, it's a bad idea now. But you know what? You know what Pence is thinking? Pence is thinking we've all got amnesia, and we forgot 2008. Pence is thinking that they're dumb. Americans are stupid. They're not going to remember that collapse that wiped away a huge part of our retirements. And had we put Social Security into it, it would have made things so much worse. Because understand, we can't go in and bail out Social Security by printing money. Remember this, because Social Security can't add to the deficit by law, which is interesting because we've got Republicans who are saying, no, we've got to hold Social Security and Medicare hostage to do something about the debt that Social Security and Medicare have nothing to do with. Again, you figure it out. I can't. It's just where we are. But I wanted to let you know the bad ideas are still out there. They never go away. They're just going to repackage it, put it in a new bumper sticker slogan, and this is where we're going to go. So expect that coming down the road. This is how they're going to get Gen Z. This is the thinking. This is how they're going to go after and encourage Gen Z to vote for them. I don't think it's going to work. Because I think you're going to have a hard time getting past all the homophobia and the misogyny and the racism and all that. But, hey, they're going to try. And I guess on a certain level, you got to maybe, possibly give them something of I don't know, a little bit. Personally, I think get your hands off of Social Security. Get your hands off of Medicare. Do not let them touch this. I had someone ask me, well, what would be the big deal? We try a new program. We try something different. Problem is once you try that, you never can return to the system that has been working. That's the problem. They're never going to let you go back. Once they kill it, they're not going to revive it. Once they've figured out how to stop it from breathing, you can bet that there'll never be another breath breathed into those lungs. Because their goal has always been to keep working people desperate. Why? Cheap labor. I mean, that at the end of it has been the mantra of the Republican Party for decades. It's the whole conservative movement. Crush workers' abilities to make better wages, hours, conditions. Crush their ability to use government to improve conditions for families. Create desperation for those people. And you can put whoever you want into that category. Hooray for the handful and the you-know-what with everybody else. And this is, again, like I said, they want to take us back to the 80s and 90s. They want to take us back to those days where, workers had no rights, where consumers were at the mercy of whomever, and the robber barons ruled the roost. And what's amazing to me is we keep falling for it. I was talking with Fred Wellman a minute ago about unity, this idea that as a country, there are things we should be united around. There are things that we should be able to come, but it's not going to happen. Because there's a segment of this population that is addicted to the outrage, addicted to, I'm just going to make everyone as miserable as I am. I mean, I look at the news that's coming out, and there are some really good news. The economy seems to be moving in the right direction. Would I like to see wages going higher? Absolutely. If we had a stronger labor movement, if we had a much higher union density, those wages would be going up. People are working on that, and we should be working on that. But everything seems to be moving in a good direction. If we had a Fed that wasn't trying to kill everything off and a Republican Party that wasn't trying to hold the world hostage, maybe we would be moving faster toward the right places. But if you watch some of the hearings and you watch some of the speeches from the House floor, you would think that the country is burning to the ground, that around every corner, families are being ripped apart, and there are people. The world view from my Republican friends is very twisted. And it's troubling to me because I want to get things done. There's so much we need to do. And to have a broken political system only benefits one group of people. And those are the people who are doing wildly well. The folks at the top are 1%ers. So when you see Marjorie, 3 names, and you see Bobo, and you see Louis Gohmert, and you see the rest of them doing their song and dance and playing their political theater, it's all about the bread and circus. It's all about continuing that outrage. And when do we stop? I mean, that's for me. When do we stop this? When do we get off the train? When do we turn the channel on the outrage and go, you know what? Yeah, okay, fine. You're upset about something, but what have you done? I had a couple people emailing me, go, Rick, you said something the other day made me think a little differently. You're right. If we want people to have children, maybe we should have an environment that we want them to want to bring into. Maybe jobs, maybe healthcare, maybe education. How come we're not doing any of that? And that's a darn good question. How come there is no legislation to do that? How come we don't have public works programs for people who can't find jobs when the private sector won't create them? Now look, we've got flush jobs. The people who are crying that they can't find workers are the ones who are paying poverty wages. This is where you go the free market, right? Pay better wages, you'll get better people. But no, we're going to go, they're lazy. Interesting world we're in. Got a lot more to get to. Want to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Quick break. Right back. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1971. That was a day of tragedy for the workers at the Thiokol Chemical Corporation plant in southeastern Georgia. An explosion killed 27 workers and injured dozens more. Explosive material meant for the Vietnam War had instead detonated in Georgia. In the early 1960s, NASA had contracted with the company to build solid rocket motors for the space program. Thiokol acquired 7,400 acres of land at Horse Pen Bluff, an isolated area of land that used to be a plantation. The company built a large 36-building complex. As orders from the space program waned, the company shifted its production to pesticides and munitions. One item they produced was trip flares for use in the Vietnam War. A trip flare is employed by a military operation to secure an area. A flare is connected to a tripwire and ignites if it is triggered. The highly flammable magnesium is a key ingredient to the flares. A fire started in one of the buildings of the plant. The employees were able to evacuate quickly, but they did not leave the area, not realizing the danger of a potential explosion. When the blast came, it could be felt as far as 50 miles away. Some of the victims were hurled 400 feet in the air. An investigation found that explosive materials had been improperly labeled and that the company's fire protection system was woefully inadequate, contributing to the loss of life. After a drawn-out legal battle, victims of the disaster won a federal lawsuit against the company for their negligence. The Vietnam War had taken an unexpected toll on the working people who gave their lives, making trip flares for the battlefront. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
An old political saying notes that the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing. However, given the proliferation of today's goofball culture wars and fanatical right-wing phobias, that truism should be updated to say, evil swarms when power-hungry leaders unleash the crazies. Which brings us to the U.S. House of Representatives, now led by a run-of-the-mill corporate Republican, Kevin McCarthy. He's always been a crassly ambitious political climber, untethered to any moral principle larger than his own ego. So he's not trusted, even by GOP lawmakers. Indeed, in an almost comical public spectacle, it took 4 days and 15 rounds of voting in January before Kevin could cut enough desperate deals to get the slimmest majority of his own Republican colleagues to make him Speaker of the House. To squeak out his win, though, he had to hand big chunks of his official power to a gaggle of extremist, far right-wing legislators who are, in a word, bonkers. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Paul Gosar, and other members of the GOP's Kooky Caucus promote unhinged QAnon conspiracy theories, warn that Jews are firing lasers from outer space to start wildfires, lionize Vladimir Putin and Adolf Hitler, call for the execution of Democratic leaders, and insist that the government is staging school shootings as an excuse to outlaw guns. Okay, they're nuts, and politics makes strange bedfellows. But McCarthy has not just climbed into bed with them, he's snuggling up tightly, naming them to powerful committees, publicly legitimizing their screwballism, and intentionally bringing the evil of bigotry, intolerance, and even fascism in from the fringe of politics to sit in the seat of power. This is Jim Hightower saying, this is shameful, and it's dangerous. Evil swarms when so-called leaders meekly give permission for crazies to use the government power to rule over us.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, interesting report over at the Daily Beast. They're reporting that, because, hey, they voted Ilhan Omar off of the Foreign Affairs Committee. And it's been reported that Republican Representative Ken Buck has commented and said it's the stupidest vote in the world, that they just took the stupidest vote in the world. And Representative Mike Simpson from Idaho, he said, yeah, this could make her a martyr. And you go, you think? Maybe you should have thought of that before. Oh, I don't know. You did it. Now, anybody surprised that they threw her off? No. How can you be surprised? Again, I go back to this. It was a bad idea when Democrats threw off the idiots that they threw off. It's a bad idea here. But the martyr thing, I think there's something here. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the top stories of the day, our good friend, former Ohio Congressman and political analyst Bob Ney. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you, Rick.
So what do you think? Are they going to make a martyr out of her?
No, I don't. I don't think it'll go to martyr status. I don't think that Marjorie Taylor Greene or Gosar, maybe internally it went to a semi-martyr status within the caucuses. I think amongst the general public it doesn't. And I think, and let me say this correctly, but of all the people that could be removed from the committee, there'll be more reaction about Schiff being removed than there will be Omar amongst the public.
So they got their 3. The Democrats did 2. Is this the end of it, or is this something we see going forward? Is this something that continues to come up, do you think?
I believe, and I believed at the time, having served 11 years with Nancy Pelosi, and knowing her style and her leadership style, I don't believe that she really wanted to do what they did at that time. There was a lot of pressure, tight votes. It stirred a lot of emotion, so she yielded to it. I think probably McCarthy wouldn't really want to do this, but again, I don't think there were much options. So it's the Old Testament eye for eye. I didn't think it was good when the Democrats did it, and I don't think it's good when the Republicans did it. Now they've both done it.
So that's the question. Now they've got it out of their system. Is this end here? Do we go, okay, you got yours, I got mine, we stop?
Well, here's the danger of this. Then it becomes the speech police. Look, I mean, there's some things that to pick out one party each here. Marjorie Taylor Greene said some things I think were just absolutely outrageous and obnoxious and white supremacist, etc. And I think that Congresswoman Ilhan Omar said some things I really just don't care for. And I'm putting myself back in Congress for a second. Does that mean at that time, if I was there, that I should say, oh, they go, and then somebody else says something I really don't like, and it's, a little bit, bad or off color or whatever, oh, we got to get them too. So I think it's a dangerous path to start down. I really do. And, people are elected by their constituencies, and couple of people that have opened their mouths right and left had close elections last time. We know that from Pobert. So I think sometimes nature takes its course, but this is precedent setting on both parties, and I think down the road it's going to be, well, why don't you get that one? How come you don't get that one? Why is Marjorie Taylor Greene back on the committee when she said things about, Jewish laser beams and things?
No, I was against it from the beginning. I thought it was a bad idea.
Same here.
And I still think it's a bad idea. Look, because I keep coming back to, you saw Marjorie, 3 names, do her little spiel. She walks into a committee room for 3 minutes, gets her FaceTime, and then bolts. But in that 3-minute FaceTime, she got her clicks. Saying that, hey, that elementary school in Illinois is getting $5 billion to teach that theory about race that's critical. Crazy stuff. Crazy stuff we're in. Want to get your thoughts on the, since you brought up the space lasers, evidently we got a giant balloon floating above the center part of the U.S.
Well, I read the articles. I'm all for shooting it down personally. I know we have to be careful. I understand that. I believe it is a spy balloon, and I'll also tell you a little tidbit. When I chaired House Administration, I was in charge of the security of the Capitol and our technology systems. We had defense-level computer systems with, protection at defense level. And our CEO would send me a message just about once a week at least, and he would say, the Chinese are trying to hack the congressional computers, or the Iranians, mainly Chinese or Iranians, not even the Russians at the time. And I would send protests to the Chinese embassy, and their answer, which one time they actually physically came over to my office, but their answer was always, these are teenagers. It has nothing to do with us. They're teenagers.
Right.
If you believe that, then we believe this is a weather balloon. I think the president made the right choice in holding Blinken off from going right now. It's not good. It's like an in-your-face thing. Here's this balloon, and all of a sudden, if we send our Secretary of State right over, it's just not a good, public policy look to it. So they made the right move there. I'd like to see, if it goes over a stretch of land that nothing could be harmed, I'd love to see them shoot it down, personally.
I mean, my initial reaction was shoot it down, but then my second reaction, as I sat and I thought about it, going, what are they getting? It's not anything that they couldn't get from their satellites. If you shoot it down, now you've created an incident that they're going to start shooting ours down, because if you don't think that we've got spy planes
we do it.
and stuff going over their territory, it seems like this could be that ramp-up moment.
Right.
This is where diplomacy could play in. And I find it ironic that the very people who are screaming about, we should be shot it down before it came into our airspace, are the same ones saying we should do nothing in Ukraine because, well, we should be using diplomacy. It just seems, it seems odd to me.
Right. But here it is, and it's circulating around. But I thought that myself, what's it really gathering? It can't be gathered by something else.
Yeah, I mean, they've got satellites. Trust me, they've mapped out every square inch of this country already.
I think this is just a Chinese way of in your face.
Yep.
And like I said, they did it with our congressional computers, trying to hack into them. We knew it was them. We had ways to detect it, and their response was laughable.
Now, but here's the thing that gets here's the important part for me, and this should be a unifying moment, because I'm always looking for something that, hey, there's something we should be able to agree on. This is China, flexing their muscle. This should be where we go as a country. China is a real threat. How do we deal with it? I mean, we just saw the CIA director come out, yesterday and say that they expect, China to invade Taiwan by 2027. They're expecting them to be much more muscular. For me, this should be that mass mobilization of getting onto war footing, reshore manufacturing, start, clawing back some stuff, shut off the TikToks, There should be some unifying stuff to this, don't you think?
Oh, I would imagine. I mean, it should be a unifier.
But I look at this, and see, this is to me, Bob, this was a trial balloon in more ways than one.
In one.
This is a trial balloon. Yeah, let's see how they react. But how do the American people react? And again, predictably, depending on which hat you bought, you're defending either extreme. Shoot it down or don't shoot it down. I'm like, my gut reaction is shoot it down, but then there's a whole bunch that goes into it. For me, there's a whole lot that goes into that.
Right. Right, and the Chinese flexing their muscles at us on our own turf. I mean, here they're causing all this excitement of this thing floating around heading eastward. It's just the Chinese way.
Yeah. My favorite response, somebody emailed me and said that, if they lived out in Montana, they'd shoot it down themselves. I'm going, I don't think your pea shooter is going to get to 10,000 feet.
Right.
Sorry, your AR-15, your AR aren't going to make it that far.
Right.
But go ahead, shoot up. Make sure you stand under it when it comes down.
Sure. I mean, the White House is technically right, and the military's right. You can't shoot it down. It's the size of three school buses. This isn't a tiny little balloon. It's the size of 3 school buses.
Let me ask the dumb question. How did we find out?
How did we find out?
I mean, you could have just stuck to it's a weather balloon and left it at that. Why did we have to come out and make a statement that it's a Chinese spy craft?
I think because we knew, and we knew with the type of technology it has that we've obviously, we can almost see inside of it. We have technology.
No, I get our military knows that. I get that.
Right.
Why is this a story? Because you're somebody who knows probably more than the average person on this stuff. This stuff happens. The Russians have been doing this stuff for years too, no?
Right.
So, it doesn't become I don't know. This has been going on for decades, and it never, I don't know, has it ever become this kind of thing before?
This has happened before. It's happened under other administrations where it's happened, and it just wasn't picked up. This happens to be the era of the Chinese, tense negotiations between our countries, the Chinese and North Korea, and the Chinese siding with Russia. So I think it's just hyped to the level that, when this happened 10 years ago and 15 and 20 years ago, it just wasn't to the hype level. It's like members of Congress at one point in time, they loved the Chinese trade deals. They loved permanent trade status for China. They bragged about it, Meanwhile, we were fighting them on it. Now you've got more people a lot of people that were for Chinese free trade deals aren't even opening their mouth right now to defend China, obviously. So it's just the hype level. It's our times.
Yeah.
The times of our country.
We didn't have social media back then. I mean, the social media feeding frenzy on all of this that has just ramped up the stupid.
Rick, I haven't had so many questions pouring into my messenger and email as in the last 2 days about this balloon. Just people they're I don't know, fascinated by it, scared by it, I don't know, intimidated or angry, something.
Yeah, I mean, I saw it and my mind went to the place of going, yeah, and? Do you not think that they're spying on us at every opportunity? Do you not think that their satellites in outer space can do exactly what that balloon, probably what the satellites could probably do better? And
do we not think that we do it? I mean, of course, we're the good guys.
Exactly. But, if we shoot this down, you know tit for tat, it's going to happen. And then you now have escalation. And this is where I think, I think Biden has made the right choice. I'd have shot it down.
Right.
Because I'm that kind of reactionary.
Mm-hmm.
But, and I gotta imagine the generals were advising him not to as well.
Right. Also, the fallout of it, I think they wanted to see where else it was headed to.
Yeah.
I don't think it can gather that much information.
Is it curious that it broke today? I mean, that today was the big day, especially with the jobs numbers that came out, that 517,000 jobs in January. That's impressive. Normally you lose jobs in January after the Christmas holiday.
I think the timing of it, I think the military's known about this. They knew it would eventually get out, so they wanted to, expose it before it, leaked out. And then there would be all the questions: why didn't the White House tell us? Why were they holding back? But its timing did come at the announcement of the jobs. Although I really don't care whatsoever for Fed Chair Jerome Powell, where they talk about the quote risks lying ahead. And one of the risks, they say, is wage growth.
Yep.
Which they say, the Fed, is rising at a pace still too swift for the Fed comfort. And I thought, well, why don't they cut their own pay and see how they like it?
And that was my response too. When Marsha Blackburn put out, we need to cut spending. I go, well, we can start by cutting your salary. That'd be a good place to start. Let's go there.
The average hourly earnings rose 0.3%, or 4.4% over the previous year. And the Fed's worried that that's rapid wage growth. I was just shocked at some of their thinking. The job announcement was good news, no question about it, especially in light of all these layoffs we've been hearing about this week with, Amazon and Facebook, et cetera, with the tech companies.
Yeah, it's crazy. Last line of questioning I wanted to get into, Tuesday, the big speech. Any thoughts on what the president will focus on? Any ideas of where you would focus if you were given the speech?
If I was given the speech, I would focus on the economy, absolutely. Have to focus on the economy. I would throw it out there about the debt ceiling. I would mention it. I would mention the debt ceiling, and also budget deficits, that willing to work and talk and be constructive on that. So I think they've got to address that. And again, the economy, the pandemic, where it stands in the eyes of the White House. I hate to kind of see the Bush. I never thought I would forget this when we waved the flag and said we won.
Yeah.
That moment.
Mission accomplished.
Mission accomplished. I don't think. I think the White House needs to be careful that it's done. Quote. It's going to be around, but it's not particularly what it was. I think they'll mention that, and I would assume, and I would mention, I would confront the issue of immigration.
Really?
Yeah, because I'll tell you why. I would challenge the Congress to come up with an immigration bill. They like to complain about the White House. They complained about Bush. They complained about, people, depends where you stood. You complained about, they complained about Trump and Obama, et cetera. And I would just say, look, need to put together a bipartisan immigration bill. And I would throw it back at them.
Do you see a bipartisan immigration bill as anywhere possibly close to reality?
Oh, no. But that's what I'd throw at them anyway. Oh no, it's with this group, no way. If I don't know if there was a consensus and you had about 20 or so Republicans, but then they would get blocked by the Rules Committee, not allowing the bill to go to the floor. But I would still throw the issue out there if I was the president.
Yeah, I see. I'm of the mindset. Some of that manufacturing jobs, 800,000 manufacturing jobs in the last 2 years have come back. The fact that they're reinvesting in infrastructure, the tunnels in New York and Baltimore that they just had events around. I think that's all good stuff.
Yeah, he has to hit on the economy. Now he's. I know it's a balloon, but he's going to have to mention something about China and negotiations. Not the balloon, but what we're doing with China. And he's kept the tariffs. I mean, there's got to be some mention of that, I think. But it's going to be a good economic speech. It has to be.
Any national calls to action? Anything? Calls. I'm sure there's going to be some calls for unity.
Well, I think one of the things the president will address. I know he's been criticized by some within the Democratic Party about his position on police, but I think he will have I think you'll see a national call by the president to look at the system, make the system work better. I think you're going to see something of that nature from the president. I really do, when it comes to police.
Any shenanigans you see on the horizon? They've got the governor of Arkansas going to give the Republican response, Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Any thoughts there?
Well, I mean, that's the standard thing. I did one when Clinton was president. That's kind of the standard thing. They pick somebody. They're picking her because she's a Huckabee. She was the press secretary, and because she's been elected governor and she's female and in Arkansas. So they're going to pick her. None of these counter speeches I've ever felt were ones that you just stick in your mind, except Rubio when he drank 900 glasses of water. That one stuck in my mind. So I don't think these are necessarily, the big picture items with the response whatsoever. For political reasons, they'll pick people that they want to highlight.
So for the bingo card, who's going to make the biggest fool of themselves in the well screaming out something?
That's the one thing I wanted to mention. Of course, there's a bit of nervousness in the House right now. I talked to some people up on the Hill today. There's nervousness because, during the State of the Union, when I was in charge of security of the Capitol for the House side, we did extensive planning. It was the biggest security night of the year because the whole government's in there, et cetera. Now there's questions raised about the security and safety. That never happened in the 11 years I was there. It just didn't happen. But due to circumstances now, and some members talking about guns, and now there's no magtometers, and after January the 6th, there's an uneasiness. So we'll see how that goes. That has to go perfect. I would assume that McCarthy, as Speaker, will plead with his people to not do any, you're a liar or anything of that nature. I would assume he's going to plead with them. Does it work? I don't know.
All right.
But he's smart enough to know he doesn't want some kind of, outrageous incident to happen.
All right. Well, we're going to see. And we'll see if they all wear their AR-15 pins that Andrew Clyde's been handing out.
Yeah, I don't know what they're going to do with that. I mean, if anything, I'd start a button thing about, inflation or something of that nature versus AR. I mean, I don't think that's the most popular thing right now.
There you go. It's all about rubbing their nose in it. But, Bob, I appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Rick.
Our good friend Bob Ney. Yeah, I'm waiting to see what kind of shenanigans comes out of it. Going to be very interesting. Going to take a quick break. Right back to wrap things up. Stick around. You listen to The Rick Smith Show. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. During the past year, there have been many stories of students walking out of public schools to protest the practices of community policing. This tactic has deep roots in the civil rights movement. On this day in labor history, the year was 1964, which saw nearly 500,000 African American and Puerto Rican students in New York City participating in a one-day school boycott. In addition to nearly half of the public school student population taking to the streets, thousands of demonstrators staged peaceful rallies across the city, gathering at the Board of Education, City Hall, and Governor Nelson Rockefeller's Manhattan office. The purpose of the boycott was to protest segregation and the poor conditions of many schools in black neighborhoods. Bayard Rustin, one of the main architects of the 1963 March on Washington, helped local parents and community groups plan the highly successful event. The massive action drew attention from the national media. The boycott's coordinators approached the United Federation of Teachers, the city's teachers' union, for an endorsement of the action. The union, however, declined, although many teachers did individually support the effort. Despite the success of the action, the school board remained unwilling to change its policies. After the 1964 boycotts did not bring about the change that they had hoped, Rustin and many of the local black organizers of the protest went their different ways. Rustin closely aligned himself with the UFT. He hoped to use the union's power to build a labor civil rights coalition to effect change. Other members of the boycott coalition turned to black community power. They advocated for black community control of local schools. These different tactics resulted in lingering tensions between black activists and the teachers' union that would help to shape New York's politics for the decades that followed. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2. Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. So, hey, we're making domestic violence great again. Today is the day where wife beaters and abusers, they've won. Evidently, a federal appeals court ruled that the government cannot stop a wife beater, someone convicted of domestic violence, and have restraining orders against them, can't stop them from owning guns. What kind of moronic, idiotic decision is that? What kind of doofus Who would do that? Oh, yeah, an abuser. I mean, it's mind-blowing to me, some of the laws and the justifications. It's incredible to me. But I got the right. But seriously, when you stop and you look at this, some of the things that are going on in this country are just defy logic. All so that the loudest, most outrageous behavior is protected. And I know, but Rick, that's what the Constitution is supposed to do. To a degree. I think if you dug up the founders and you figured out how to breathe life back